Oh, welcome back to the channel. It is that time of the magic cycle again. It is set review time, so I have a fun video for you today. It is the Marvel's Spider-Man Canadian Highlander set review. The Spider-Man MTG set is upon us, and it's an interesting one. It is a very parasitic set. So a lot of the cards in this set say things like Spider and Villain, and those are not cards that are going to necessarily naturally slot into a lot of what's going on in Canadian Highlander already. So this might be a bit of a shorter set review than average, just me today. I know you all liked when we had Jared and I in the same set review, and we're going to try and do more of that going forward, but for this one it just didn't come together, so we're doing the classic. It's sort of like the morning after the set has been fully spoiled and I've got my coffee and I'm set reviewing. So without further ado, let's get into the categories. It's the same categories as always. I've got format staples, playable, just like a card that you might put in your deck, maybe in one deck, which is like, it's sort of a misnomer. It's like these are cards that are I think like fringe playable. Like you're gonna like look at them and they're gonna be like card number 110 or 105 of the cards that you end up wanting to put in your deck, and I think a lot of the time they're gonna get cut, but maybe one time you end up putting it in your deck and it's okay. And then I will definitely die to this card. These are cards that have powerful text boxes, but I think don't necessarily fit in the format for one reason or the other. But if they resolve, or if someone does decide to play it, I will definitely die to it at least one time. So without further ado, let's get started with the format staples. Very short list of format staples this time, and honestly, the word format staples, it's doing a lot of heavy lifting here. I think that all three of these are honestly like close, but I think these are the three cards for me that are the highest power level in the set. So we'll start with Arachne Psionic Weaver. This is 2 and a white for a legendary creature, Spider Human Hero, which is a creature type you are gonna see a lot in this set, something like 100 and something times in this set. There's this creature type appears. So this is a 3 mana 3/3. It has web slinging, which is one of the set mechanics. Which is you may cast this spell for whatever its web slinging cost is. If you also return a tapped creature you control to its owner's hand, Arachne's web slinging cost is a single white mana, so quite cheap. And then the effect is, as Arachne enters, look at an opponent's hand, then choose a card type other than creature. Spells of the chosen type cost 1 more to cast. So I think this card is pretty good. It's a powerful hate bear, and especially if you end up being able to cast it for 1, which seems relatively feasible in some of these white decks. Like, it doesn't have to be a non-token creature, so sometimes you can even potentially just get rid of a token to put this into play on the cheap. And I think against most decks, you're going to find a pretty good creature, or a pretty good non-creature type to name. And the fact that you also get to look at your opponent's hand means that you get to make an even more informed decision. So I like this one. I think that you're going to reach for this one in some of the Taxes decks. That 3-drop spot is starting to get crowded for sure. But this is just another one of these kind of like asymmetrical Taxes effects. I mean, this one, it affects you, but you are going to undoubtedly name a type that doesn't matter to you. And also you're likely mostly playing creatures in these kinds of decks. So yeah, I think it's kind of interesting. Obviously, the fact that it's not just all non-creature spells is a bit of a bummer, but the fact that the stat line is a lot more aggressive is good, and the web slinging cost making it able to come down on turn 1 or turn 2, sorry, or even I guess turn 1 in Magical Christmas Land, I think is also pretty exciting. Okay, next we have Spider Punk. This is 1 and a red for a legendary creature, Spider Human Hero. This is a 2/1 that has Riot for the sake of people who weren't playing the third Ravnica set, is this creature enters with your choice of a +1/+1 counter or haste. So it's either a 3/2 not hasty or a 2/1 haste. It says other spiders you control have Riot. This is unlikely to have a lot of text in Canadian Highlander. It could come up, I suppose, but it's not a big one. But spells and abilities can't be countered and damage can't be prevented. And for like these kind of like red-green monsters decks, having a 2-drop setup creature that does something like this seems really good. The fact this has haste means that it's never really, really dead, which is pretty important. And these are just really powerful text boxes. Like both of the both of the can't be countered and can't be prevented text lines are ones that these decks are typically going to be interested in. Yeah, I think that this card's going to see a good amount of play in aggressive red decks, and I think as a result it meets the standard of being a format staple. The last one is Spider-Woman Stunning Savior. This is 1 and a hybrid blue-white for a legendary creature, Spider Human Hero. Shocking. This is a 2/2 flying that says, artifacts and creatures your opponents control enter tapped. So this text box is pretty good against like a bunch of the artifact combo decks. It's less powerful, obviously, against Citadel Storm, but it's quite good against Paradox Academy. It's pretty good against something like, say, like Time Vault. It makes it harder for them to win on the turn that they draw their untapper. They need like pretty specific things to be able to set that up, or they need to sequence like untapper into Time Vault. And one of the reasons why I have this card in the format staples list is actually just the color identity of this card is very powerful. The fact that this is a Hate Bears effect that you can play in mono blue, I think is pretty good. Or, I mean, I'm not saying that you would necessarily play it in mono blue, although Flying Man, I think, is very happy to have another 2/2 flyer that has a relevant text box. But it's playable like in, Jeskai, or your Grixis deck gets to play this card if it wants to. And there aren't that many of these kinds of Hate Bearsy effects that are super splashable. Like blue-black getting to play a card like this is like kind of funky to me, and I think it's definitely pretty powerful. And the nice thing about it is because it's artifacts and creatures, it has text in most combo matchups while also having text in the creature matchups as well. So it's never really dead. Like you're gonna find that it gives you some amount of value at basically all times, which I think is pretty good. So yeah, I have this one rated decently highly. It also goes in one of my favorite decks currently, which is the blue-white tempo deck. I think is really happy to have another early play that is also disruptive. And that's actually it for format staples. I don't have anything else on this set hitting the kind of like requisite line of being a format staple. Everything else I think is like playable maybe, but I'm not jumping to put these in decks, and I didn't immediately look at a lot of these cards and say, yes, absolutely, 10 out of 10, 100% this goes in X, Y, and Z deck. But a lot of these cards I think you're going to try, and you're probably going to end up playing some amount of them in some decks, just not maybe quite as ubiquitously as those first three that I talked about. So first one is Ultimate Green Goblin, and if you're wondering why we're starting with a gold card when I usually go in color order, I added this one late, so it had to be added near the front. So Ultimate Green Goblin is a 1 black-red hybrid 5/4, so very, very large. It's a 3-mana 5/4 that you can cast in mono black or mono red or in Rakdos. And it says, at the beginning of your upkeep, discard a card, then create a treasure token. And it also has Mayhem for 2 and a hybrid black-red mana. Mayhem is another new set mechanic. This is basically fixed madness, or it's just like different madness. So this says you may cast this card from your graveyard for its Mayhem cost if you discarded it this turn. But then it also says timing rules still apply. So obviously with madness, there was some kind of like funky stuff going on where you could like give your creatures flash and things like that, which I guess they decided they felt was slightly too powerful, and so they've opted instead to create a new keyword that makes you respect timing rules. I think this card's quite good. It's very big. Being a 5/4 instead of a 5/3 is quite relevant, I think. And getting a treasure token every turn, like at the cost of discarding a card, a lot of the times these kind of black-red decks, like in literal Rakdos, I think you might even play this card. Like you often have things that you don't need, or you have things that you actively want to put in the graveyard. And getting a treasure token, like jumping from 3 to 5 mana, I think can be really high impact because it allows you to double spell. Obviously, you're discarding a card, so that makes it harder to double spell. Sorry, I'm being invaded by cats. That makes it harder to double spell. But I think in general, this effect is quite good. It kind of allows you to stockpile mana too if you want to. And if you end up in a situation where you're like more like Hellbent, then you don't even really feel the downside because the discard is in your upkeep. So if you end up Hellbent, you get to discard nothing in your upkeep, and then make a treasure token, then draw your card for turn and play it, which is also not nothing. Additionally, they've printed a lot of Mayhem cards in this set and more kind of like Mayhem enablers, and I'll talk about more of those later on, but I think we might finally be kind of getting there on a madness like discard matters decks. Like, we've already seen people doing it. Some of the cards that got printed in Lost Caverns of Ixalan, there were some pretty powerful discard matters cards there, and people have tried playing those ones, like your Marauding Makos of the world, that sort of thing. And I think we were still maybe a little bit short on enablers to make those work, but we're now, I think, hitting a density of both cards that enable discarding and also cards that get paid off for discarding that we might be there. We might finally be at the point where you can build a fully like synergistic deck based around this kind of plan. Okay, next we have Peter Parker, and on the flip side, we have the Amazing Spider-Man. So the way these works, these are dual face cards, so you can cast them for either side. But what's kind of neat about these ones is that you get to also, if you cast them on their like alter ego side, like they're you get to cast them and then you can transform them later, which is pretty nice. So you can oftentimes play these early on, and then if you then have the mana later on, it's kind of a way to sink your mana or upgrade the creature. So Peter Parker is a 1 and a white 0/1 that says when Peter Parker enters, create a 2/1 green creature token with reach. And then for 1 green, white, blue, you can transform Peter Parker. You can activate this only as a sorcery. And then on the flip side, Peter Parker is the Amazing Spider-Man, which is a 1 green, white, blue, 4/4 with vigilance, reach, and it says each legendary spell that you cast that's 1 or more colors has web slinging for green, white, blue, which is pretty interesting. I think this is pretty powerful, a pretty powerful text box. This basically says once you have this in play, anything that you're casting that isn't colorless can be cast for banned mana if you have a creature to return. I know one of my friends, Jason, was talking about playing this in Bant tokens, which sounds great. Obviously, the 2/1 token there is relevant. Just getting like 2 bodies is nice. And I think if you ever do flip into the Amazing Spider-Man or just cast it as the Amazing Spider-Man later in the game, this does have the potential to really do some cool setup stuff and allow you to cheat on some mana a little bit in a way that might be powerful. But in general, I think the reason this card is good is that it's like kind of just a raise the alarm that has the potential to later on upgrade into a better creature, which seems quite powerful. I think like the Bant token deck is going to want this. We've sort of seen with the Johnny that like these sort of effects that are like make 2 bodies and then maybe potentially later on be able to upgrade one of the bodies are just generally good. Like they just seem to be quite playable, and I think Peter Parker is a reasonable one in that same line of cards. Okay, so next we have Spectacular Spider-Man. A lot of these cards are like adjective Spider-Man, so I'm going to have to be pretty descriptive about which ones I'm talking about. But this is 1 and a white for a 3/2 flash that has 2 abilities. One is pay 1 colorless mana, or generic mana, I should say, and it's a Spectacular Spider-Man gains flying until end of turn. And then for generic mana and sacrificing Spectacular Spider-Man, creatures you control gain hexproof and indestructible until end of turn. So 3/2 flash is already totally fine for 2 mana. Like you wouldn't play a card that only had that stat line, but you're not embarrassed about that at all. It's pretty nice. And the fact that this can become evasive if you have extra mana lying around is nice. It's good at fighting over like emblems, things like that. And the fact that it can then subsequently protect your whole board if you're going for like more of a wide board strategy, I think is also quite good. This is a pretty flexible card. Like this card is decent if it's your only threat, because you can just like chuck it down on end of turn and then protect it and give it flying to kind of like chip away at your opponent's life total. Or if you're more of a like white based go wide deck, it also just works as 3 mana protect all my creatures or something of that ilk. So I like this one. Very flexible card. I don't think you're going to play it in every single white deck by any means, but I think a lot of white decks are going to be pretty happy to play this one, especially the more creature-based ones. I think if you're getting value out of both of the activated abilities, then it's better. I think that as kind of like a Jeskai, like protect protect the queen style threat. Like it's not really getting there for me in that position, but I can definitely see you wanting this one in certain spots. And one thing that I will say, there's like an equipment or like modified creature sub theme in this set, and there have definitely been in recent months people really grinding some different decks that utilize the modified keyword pretty well, right? So like if you've been watching any of the North 100 content, they've been playing every flavor of equipment under the sun. I've been playing like blue-white heroic, which is a deck that cares about having both creatures and ways to protect them. Like all these kinds of decks really, I think, like having evasive creatures that can also double as ways to potentially protect creatures that you've invested quite a lot of resources into. And Spectacular Spider-Man kind of goes into all those kinds of decks. And there's a bunch more of those cards later on that we'll talk about, but this is the one that I think is the most generically powerful. Okay, so next we have Norman Osborn. This is 1 and a blue for a human scientist villain, but he's a double-faced card, so the other side of this is the Green Goblin, which is cool. So on the first side, this is a 1 and a blue 1/1 that says Norman Osborn can't be blocked, and when it deals combat damage to a player, it connives, which is draw a card, discard a card, and then if you discard a non-land, put a +1/+1 counter on this creature. And then on the other side, it's a flying menace 3/3 that says spells cast from your graveyard cost 2 less to cast, and then it also says each non-land card in your graveyard has mayhem. The mayhem cost is equal to the mana cost. So quite good, I would say. Essentially, this is another one of these cards in that list of cards that I think are potentially going to enable us to finally play like Grixis Madness or something to that ilk. If you play this early, it's just going to like filter your draws, potentially grow as well if you end up filtering away non-lands. Like you can have a situation where this becomes a 3/3 by turn 4 that's unblockable. Like that's very reasonable. And then what's kind of cool is like, let's say you connive twice, put 2 counters on it, and then you transform it into Green Goblin. Well, now you've got like a 5/5 flying menace, like that is going to generate a ton of value, which is quite powerful. Paying 4 mana for this effect is not something that you're going to want to be doing a lot of the time, but having it as a payoff, I think, is quite good. And there's also going to be situations, I think, where you can like set up a situation where like you flip this with maybe 5 mana available and you've already discarded something, and then you'll be able to cast it right away, so you can kind of get your value pretty quickly. And the fact that this discounts by 2 generic means that I think you're actually potentially going to be able to set up some like pretty gross turns with this, which like obviously it's a little bit win more, but like you can kind of imagine like if you're able to ever cast like a Faithless Looting and discard 2 actual spells that you want to cast and then get to cast them for their mayhem cost with Green Goblin, like that's going to feel absurd and you're probably going to win the game. So I had this one in the playable list just because I think that the power level is high enough that it's just a very, very threatening creature, and it's going to be kind of one of these like kill on sight things a lot of the time. And, obviously some amount of the time it's going to die, and that's not going to be great. But when it doesn't die, it's going to be very, very good. And the fact that it also has this alternative mode of being kind of an enabler for the rest of what this kind of deck is going to be doing, I think is also quite good. Okay, next we have Agent Venom. This is a 2 and a black, 2/3 flash menace. It's a symbiote soldier hero. And this says, whenever another non-creature you control dies, you draw a card and you lose 1 life. So we've seen like a bunch of this style of effect. It's not the first time we've seen this kind of effect. And these effects don't tend to see a ton of play in Highlander, but the fact that this one has flash is quite nice. So you can like use it in response to a removal spell, get your value right away. And then being like a menace 2/3 just means that in general, this is like a little bit more effective as a creature, broadly speaking. So I thought it would be reasonable. It's probably the best one of these effects at 3 mana now. I can't think of one that you would play over this. And in the kind of like aristocracy decks that are going to try and go really over the top with an effect like this, the life loss often doesn't matter because you've got like Blood Artist effects and that kind of thing that are going to be offsetting it. So yeah, pretty powerful card. Notably not a May. So I guess there are worlds in which like your opponent can use removal spells to drain you out of the game, but that's a pretty big edge case, and I would not be worrying about it too much. So yeah, Ancient Venom, cool card. Sort of best in slot at this point for this style of effect, and as a result, I put it on the list. This style of effect, I think, is still like in the fringe playable kind of category. Like you're not reaching for this in every single one of your decks, but when you do, I think this is one of the ones you're going to reach for. Next, we have Electro Assaulting Battery. This is 1 red for a human villain, legendary creature. It's a 2/3 flying. It says you don't lose unspent red mana as steps and phases end. And then it says you may, whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, add red mana. And then when Electro leaves the battlefield, you may pay X. When you do, he deals X damage to target player. So I have a bit of a hard time evaluating this card. I think there are some amount of the time where you're going to play this and your opponent is going to go, okay, I'll kill it right now, and you're going to get no value out of it, and it's going to suck. But at the same time, this is another one of those kind of like kill on sight cards that if this comes down on turn 3 or like turn 2 with a Mox or something, in your like blue-red tempo deck or your blue-red prowess deck or something like that, and you get to like get like 2 or 3 triggers, like making mana on the trigger is pretty exciting. And it's also kind of nice that this says when it leaves the battlefield, you get to do the effect. So like if this gets Caracas, which is something that most of the cards in this set really struggle with, I should mention, you still get to potentially deal the damage to the player, which is kind of nice. Or if it gets bounce spelled, if it gets flickered, maybe we could cook something there. We could like ephemerate Electro, build your own seismic tremors or something. Yeah, I think that there's enough text on this that's pretty interesting that it's worth trying. And as a result, I put it on the list in this case. I think that it is entirely plausible that maybe I'm wrong about this card and it doesn't end up seeing a whole lot of play. But the stat line is reasonable. It has flying, so that's not bad. And if you get to go off with this card, I think you are really going to go off and feel very far ahead. Okay, next we have Heroes Hangout. This is a single red for a sorcery that says choose one. Either exile the top 2 cards of your library, choose one of them until your next turn. You may play the end of your next turn. You may play that card, or patrol the night, which is 1 or 2 target creatures get +1/+0 and gain first strike until end of turn. This is interesting because it's one of the first times that they've printed one of these kind of red exile based cards in a way that really like cantrips pretty effectively. Like you can finally like somewhat feasibly just play this on turn 1 if you really wanted to. Like if you need to find land, for example, or you're looking for a 2-drop in your deck, like you can just play this on turn 1 and hope to hit. You don't necessarily have to save up, which I think is pretty reasonable. And this is just like another card that like the blue-red prowess decks are going to really like any of these kind of prowessy decks that want to maximize the number of cantrips they have. Like this is it's not quite as good as a cantrip because the card doesn't go to your hand, but the way that these decks are typically structured, you are a lot of the time just going to be perfectly fine with whatever the card you choose is being, whatever card you end up choosing, you'll play it that turn or the next turn anyway. Like that's just not going to be that big a deal. And then having the kind of bailout mode of also potentially being like a way to get a bit of extra damage through or make combat complicated, I think is reasonable as well. But I think you're almost always casting this for the date-night side of the kind of exile-based cantrip. Okay, next we have Lizard Connor's Curse. This is 2 green for a 5/5 lizard villain. It has trample, and it says, when Lizard Connor's Curse enters, up to 1 other target creature loses all abilities and becomes a green lizard creature with power and toughness 4/4. Okay, so a couple of things about this card that I think are pretty good and pretty interesting. The first thing is that this is an effect that stays around even after Lizard leaves. So the interaction that I think you kind of naturally think of is like, let's say you've gone like Mana Dork, 3-drop, and then maybe it's turn 4 and you've hit another land drop and maybe you have an extra Mana Dork or something. and your deck kind of caps out at 4 mana. When you play Lizard, you can upgrade one of these mana dorks into a 4/4 forever, which I think is pretty reasonable. I think that's definitely something that you would be interested in doing. I think the other part of this is that although it is not ideal, there are certainly some times where you just need some kind of interaction in green to get rid of a problematic creature. Think Barrowgoyf, right? They play a Barrowgoyf. It's going to kill you. It's going to gain infinite life. You're never going to be able to block it. It's going to make itself bigger. But instead, you just get to Lizard it. And yeah, now they have a vanilla 4/4. But like vanilla 4/4 infinitely more beatable than Barrowgoyf, for example, or Flage or something like this, right? I think that you are less likely to be casting this as a kind of like pseudo removal spell, because like a 4/4 is a very reasonably sized creature, but it's nice that it has both options. So I think this is definitely one that you're going to see people reaching for in kind of these green-red monsters-y shells. You need to be playing Mana Dorks with this card. I don't think that you want to be playing it just as like a card that you're casting on 4, because you really want to have outs to be upgrading your own power and toughness more often than not. But I think in those kind of like Mana Dork monster shells, this card looks to be pretty powerful and pretty good. Okay, next we have Miles Morales, or the Ultimate Spider-Man. So Miles Morales is a 1 and a green, 1/2 human citizen hero that says when Miles Morales enters, put a +1/+1 counter on each of up to 2 target creatures. Notably, you can target it can target itself, so it can be like basically like a 2/3 that also buffs another creature at all times, which is pretty good. And that's honestly like the side of this card that you're mostly evaluating it on. I think is that like would you play this card if it was just basically a 3/4 for 2, but you get to distribute the stats around? And I think you would. I think that's already pretty reasonable. There are just going to be decks that are down for this kind of effect. Notably, like this +1/+1 counters deck, man, just keeps getting more and more cards, and this is another one in that list that seems pretty good. Similarly, like the Naya like equipment, like modified creatures matters deck likes having things that just randomly put counters on things, and Miles does that pretty well. The other side is the Ultimate Spider-Man. Now, this is a 6-cost card, which on average, it means that it is not going to be playable in our format. But if you ever flood out and you draw this late, or this sticks around for a really long time and you end up with 6 mana, this card's very good. So the Ultimate Spider-Man is a 3 red, green, white, 4/3 with First Strike and Haste. And then it has 2 abilities. One, it has Camouflage. You pay 2 generic mana. You get to put a +1/+1 counter on Ultimate Spider-Man. He gains Hexproof and becomes colorless until end of turn. The colorless part, I'm not sure. I guess it lets you get around protection, which is not bad. Lets you kind of like potentially attack through like a core Firewalker or something. That's not an irrelevant interaction. And then, yeah, obviously the Hexproof is nice. Good way to dodge a removal spell. And then the more exciting text line is whenever you attack, double the number of each kind of counter on each spider and legendary creature you control. So this puts +1/+1 counters on itself. Also, if this is like entered and then flipped, it's already going to have a +1/+1 counter as well. So it is one of these attackers that like really exponentially grows quite quickly and might grow your board as well. So maybe there's like a Naya counters deck or something like that wants this card. I do think you probably want to be in Naya to be playing this one. You want to have outs to cast both sides. But it's a pretty exciting one, I think, if you can use both sides. Okay, next we've got Scarlet Spider Kane. This is black-red for a 2/1 menace, which says when Scarlet Spider enters, you may discard a card. If you do, put a +1/+1 counter on him, and he has Mayhem for 1. So this is another one of these like madness cards / mayhem cards that I think are, again, potentially helping us make this deck more playable. If you, let's say you have a discard outlet, you play this for 1, then you discard something else that you can mayhem or madness. Like you have, like, say you have the Fiery Temper or something. You get to have put a like 3/2 menace into play and have cast your Lightning Bolt, which and if you were like looting at the same time, you know, it's like quite gross, right? You're definitely going to be very far ahead. But even if you don't discard a card when this enters and it's just a 2/1 menace that you maybe like mayhemmed into play, I think that that's still pretty exciting. It's just kind of a glue card. Like it's not unbelievable, totally unbeatable, anything like that. But it's powerful, and it's just the kind of effect that those decks needed more of. Like, they just need more cards that can be Madness Storm Mayhem for one. Because a lot of the time you run into these problems where, like, you maybe have like all discard outlets and nothing to enable them with, and nothing to pay them off, or the other way around. So just having more just generally playable payoffs that aren't embarrassing cards on their own is nice. And this one also can be a discard outlet if you really needed to be in a pinch. Like 2 mana discard a card is not typically what those kinds of decks are looking for, but you know, you can do it. Okay, next we have Spider-Man 2099. My favorite Spider-Man, by the way, in case you were wondering. So this is a blue-red 2/3 Spider-Human hero. It has the ability from the future, which says you can't cast Spider-Man 2099 during your first, second, or third turns of the game. This text box has typically been a death knell for cards in Canadian Highlander, I gotta say. But I don't know. This card is powerful enough that I think casting it on turn 4 still seems pretty reasonable. It has double strike, it has vigilance, and it says at the beginning of your end step, if you played a land or cast a spell this turn from anywhere other than your hand, Spider-Man 2099 deals damage equal to its power to any target. So I think the interactions that you're looking for here are like, obviously flashing back cards from the graveyard is the most, I think, powerful one with this one. Like, this to me is more of a control card than it is like a tempo or mid-range card. Like, I think that I could see a deck like Jeskai being interested in something like this. You just get to like play this on turn 4, hold up a counter spell. Then if you ever do like cast something from your graveyard, or maybe you do end up exiling a card and then casting it from exile, like you get to with Ragavan or with anything really, you get to trigger this, and the stat line on its own is quite good, right? Like double strike vigilance, this is going to attack and block quite well. It's going to stabilize boards and it only costs 2. So I think this one is worth a shot. I think we may well discover that the can't cast it on turn 1, 2, or 3 is enough of a deal breaker that we actually can't play this card. It's also worth noting, like, this is another reasonable one to like potentially cheat into play with like Unearth or Helping Hand, something like that. And maybe we might see that come up as well. But yeah, I like Spider-Man 2099. I think this one looks pretty interesting, and it's definitely one of the cards that I am looking forward to putting in my decks first. It's noteworthy that I think that I'm not going to get to put literal Spider-Man 2099 because I mostly play on Magic Online, so I'm going to have to play with the in-universe Magic equivalent. But yeah, that's a different issue. Okay, so next we have Symbiote Spider-Man. This is a 2 and a blue-black hybrid, 2/4. It's a Symbiote Spider hero. This says whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, look at that many cards from the top of your library, put one of them into your hand and the rest into your graveyard. And then it has the ability Find New Host, which for 2 and a blue or black, you can exile this card from your graveyard, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. It gains this card's other abilities. Activate only as a sorcery. So what's cool about this is kind of like a pretty decently statted Ophidian. 2/4 means it's not the easiest to block profitably, and if you can clear the way for it, that's great. It also is like enabling things like Delve and Flashback, which is really relevant. You actually, oftentimes in these blue-black decks, like you really want to be actively hemorrhaging cards into your graveyard because you just have so many things that care about them at this time. And then the Find a New Host ability is nice bonus. Is a nice bonus, I think. If you ever, are in a longer game and you are able to put this on a bigger creature, especially, you get to start like maybe cracking for like 4 or 5 and looking at the top 5 cards and picking one. Like, you're gonna win that game, I think, a lot of the time, and that's definitely very reasonable as well. No ETB, it's a legendary. Maybe it gets Karakis and you hate your life or something like that. So I can't have it any higher than Playables, but I think it's interesting. I think it's a card that you might see people reaching for. Certainly, like Psychic Frog, it is not. But if you were looking for more kind of like Ophidian style effects where you want to have a deck where your plan is to clear the way and be constantly like churning through your deck, this is another one that you can add to those style decks. Okay. we are on to maybe in one deck in record time. I think usually these set reviews take me hours, but I think we're only like 35 minutes in or something, which hey, for me is great. Sorry, the picture quality on one of these images is quite bad. I'm not sure why. Okay, so we're at the maybe in one deck phase of the video. So this is cards that are obviously lower in power level, but I think you might well find space for them somewhere. And we're going to start with a smattering of cards that I'm pretty excited about for some of like the pet decks that I play. So I mentioned earlier on in the video that there are a bunch of equipment matters, enchantment matters, like basically like modified creature matters, decks cropping up in the format recently. Obviously, the Final Fantasy set pushed a bunch more equipment into the format that was reasonable, and so as a result, people have been really trying out more and more strategies around that. And this set is also going to add more fuel to that fire and give you more enablers, more equipments, and I think it could be pretty interesting. For me, the modification of choice that I like is auras. The blue-white heroic deck is kind of like my baby, and I'm excited to get new cards for it. So we'll start with cards that I'm interested in playing in blue-white heroic, and then I think some of these cards have double duty and could also be played in maybe like Bant equipment, for example. So first we have Skyward Spider. This is a blue-white hybrid, 2/2 with Ward 2, which is the exciting text line that says when this creature, as long as this creature is modified, it has flying. So what's cool is like this is pretty hard to interact with, and when you're going to be investing mana into upgrading your creatures either through equipment or through enchantments, you really like the way you get blown out is by like removal spell in response to your equipment activation or your aura attach. Like this is the way that you lose 90% of the games that you lose, is that happens in an early phase, and then you are in like a really rough position from that point on. And Skyward Spider having Ward means that that's much harder to have happen early. Obviously later in the game people are going to be able to pay the Ward 2, but like if you just play this on turn 2 on the play and then they untap with 2 mana, like I guess they can like Fury it and pay the 2, but it's relatively challenging to kill a Ward 2 creature on the draw. And even once they get up to 3 mana, like they need exactly 1 mana removal spell and they got to consume their whole turn to do it. And it's just like very reasonable. And the fact that it then subsequently gets flying if you modify it, which obviously in the decks that are going to want to be playing this, that's going to be happening basically all the time. I actually really like this card. I think it's a pretty cool glue card. You're going to be really happy to have it on turn 2 a lot of the time. Like it's not going to be the best 2-drop in your deck, but it's going to be a 2-drop that you're going to be perfectly happy to see. Next, we have Bioorganic Carapace. This is 2 white-blue artifact equipment. It says when this equipment enters, attach it to target creature you control, which I think is quite important for equipment these days. You want to get value out of them right away. And then it says equipped creature gets +2/+2 and has whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, draw a card for each modified creature you control. So in like the Equipment Matters decks, like those decks are sometimes going like tall with one creature with a bunch of equipments on it. But if you draw this, then you get to know that like you could also potentially go wide, and like especially some of the like job select Final Fantasy equipments like are already naturally kind of like a creature plus an equipment stapled together. They're just modified creatures by default. I think that this one is quite good. It's already saying draw a card every time you deal combat damage, and it can be as much as 2 or 3 or whatever cards as well. So the ceiling is really high on this card, but the floor is also very reasonable, which is like 4 mana, give my thing +2/+2, and draw a card every time it deals combat damage. Like that's fine. It's not amazing. You're playing it because it can be better than that a lot of the time. But even as that floor, the fact that you don't have to pay to equip it, it comes in and it immediately gets equipped to something, I think is very important for why this card seems reasonable, because you can curve 3-drop into this and get to attack right away. So yeah, pretty excited about this one. I think that one, I think like Bant equipment definitely might be interested in playing this kind of card. I kind of wonder if there's not a Jeskai equipment deck as well. I know that most of the ones seem to be green, and I kind of think that maybe you might just want to be something like Jeskai as well. That could also be interested in something like this. And then yeah, I could also see you wanting this card in a counters deck or something like that. But definitely the equipment deck is the one that seems the most excited by this. Next, we have Wraith, Vicious Vigilante. This is 1 white, blue for a legendary creature, human detective hero. This creature has double strike and can't be blocked, and it's a 1/1. So 3 mana 1/1, not exciting. And like I mentioned, like the way that you lose in a lot of these modification decks is that you lose your creature in response to an activation. On the other hand, there are certain matchups where interaction is not the thing that you are worried about. The thing that you are worried about is being fast enough. So against a lot of like the fast combo decks, like you do just need to find a way to put your foot on the gas and end the game quickly. And this is a card that is definitely going to do that. It's not chump blockable. And if you get this thing's power up to 4 or 5, it's like ending the game in like 2 attacks most of the time. So I think that this is a reason one to potentially reach for. Being a legend is really awkward, and that's the reason this card won't get played in these decks potentially. I could also see potentially playing this card in like the blue-white tempo deck that I've been talking about. It's just like, I think you really do want to be improving this thing's power if you're going to be doing that kind of thing with it. But I like it. Double strike is a keyword that I'm keenly aware of whenever I see it, and obviously it appears here with can't be blocked, which is maybe the next best keyword to see when you're looking at double strike. Okay, next we have Arana, Heart of the Spider. This is a 1 red-white spider human hero. This says, whenever you attack, put a +1/+1 counter on target attacking creature. And then whenever a modified creature you control deals combat damage to a player, exile the top card of your library. You may play that card this turn. So this is, again, another effect that is going to allow you to churn through your deck if you get attacking with modified creatures, which is something that those kinds of decks are interested in. This self-enables because it can actually like put counters on creatures, making them modified. And even just as like a 3 mana play that lets your 2/2 immediately get an extra counter because it's going to attack, or your 2-drop, get a counter because it's attacking, like that's already pretty exciting. This card may be better than I'm giving it credit for. This one might have deserved to be in the playables category because, if you curve this out, you go like on a Mox draw, you go like 2-drop, and then your 3-drop is this. You pretty immediately get to start generating some additional value. And if this replaces itself even, like you get 1 extra card played because of it. I mean, that's already quite good, and it's generating extra pressure. So I don't know, maybe this one's better than I think, but it for me, I thought, it's more of a maybe in one deck kind of card, but I'd love to be proven wrong. Okay. Next, we have Carnage, Crimson Chaos. This is a 2 black-red legendary creature, symbiote villain. This is a 4/3 trample with mayhem black-red, so that's important that it can potentially be cast for as little as 2. And it says, when Carnage enters, return target creature with mana value 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. It gains, this creature attacks each combat if able, and when this creature deals combat damage to a player, sacrifice it. So it's not a permanent reanimate, but if you're playing a kind of like aggressively slanted deck, odds are that's fine. You're just happy enough to reanimate something and either get a powerful ETB off of it, like Carnage Interpreter or something like that, or you're just happy enough to get it back, have it connect 1 time, and then carry on with your 4/3 trampler that you cast, ideally for 2. This is definitely a pretty good value card, and yeah, I like that it is just yet another one of these kind of enablers for the Madness Mayhem deck, or Mayhem and Madness deck. That's probably a better way to say it. And I think that it's the kind of thing the deck needed. So yeah, I think that broadly speaking, this one is pretty exciting, and you'll play it in that deck. I don't really see it seeing play in other strategies, but certainly in like Grixis Madness or maybe Jund Madness. I'm actually not 100% sure what color I think the Madness deck needs to be. I am gonna build it once I finish this set review. That's my next job is build the Madness deck to have ready to play once these cards come out. But yeah, I'm not 100% sure, but I think that this one's gonna be in it no matter what. You're definitely black red, and then you're probably splashing a third color. Okay, next we have Web of Life and Destiny. This is a 6 green enchantment, but it has Convoke. And this says, at the beginning of combat on your turn, look at the top 5 cards of your library. You may put a creature card from among them onto the battlefield. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. So this card is really splashy. And the fact that you get the activation at beginning of combat and not beginning of upkeep, which is how they used to template these cards, a little piece of subtle power creep, means that you get value the turn it comes into play, which matters a lot. The fact that this is not just 8 mana, do nothing the turn you play it, it's actually 8 mana, look at the top 5 cards of your library, put a creature into play. Like, you wouldn't pay 8 mana for that effect, but you might pay 8 mana for that effect every turn, and especially if you can maybe use like some tokens to help pay this off. I think that this card looks kind of decent. One deck that I'm sort of interested in giving this a shot in is actually that blue-green Eldrazi deck I was playing on the channel. That's a deck that like generates a bunch of spawn tokens and can actually play a card like this pretty early and is actively looking to cheat big creatures into play as much as possible, and this is a way to do this. I think too, like the Cradle Hoof decks, like this is maybe too off plan for them, but it's not unreasonable for them to make 8 mana or to generate a bunch of tokens that could be used to pay the Convoke cost of this card. So yeah, this is again a maybe in one deck kind of card. I don't see it as being like this totally absurd, you're going to die to it all the time kind of card. It is also, I guess, relevantly like another reasonable Academy Rector target, but I think that if you're Academy Rector and you're going to be looking to do something more broken than this. But yeah, a pretty interesting one. I'm going to try it. Pretty excited to try it in Eldrazi. I think you could also probably try it in other green mana dork decks that are pretty creature heavy. Maybe the tokens deck wants it, but I think those ones tend to be a little bit too spell dense. You really want to feel like you're going to hit a creature every time. I think if you brick once, this card is going to feel awful, and maybe top 5 is not enough. It's not enough of your deck to feel comfortable feeling like it's going to hit every time, but I don't know. I'm excited. I'm excited to try it. Okay, next we have Sandman, Shifting Scoundrel. This is 1 green for a legendary creature, Sand Elemental Villain, elemental relevant creature type. Sandman's power and toughness are equal to the number of lands you control, so this is most often going to be a 3/3 when you play it. And it says Sandman can't be blocked by creatures with power 2 or less. And then for 3 green, you can return this card and target land card from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. So this is like an interesting grindy card for like a lands-based strategy. I think like green, black, rock, something like that. I don't think that this kind of card can be played in today's format. I don't think the format has time to be dirtling around and doing stuff like this, but Lord knows I've been proven wrong before about other things. And this card does dirtle with the best of them, right? Like it comes down and is a reasonably challenging to block 3/3, and then if it does end up dying, you can use it to recur a powerful land or just to ramp, I guess, and get like a large creature back. You can do it at instant speed, which is not nothing as well. And the fact that this can't really be chump blocked by like, little tokens or whatever is pretty good too. So I don't think this one's going to get into many decks for me, but I felt like this one was high enough power level that there's definitely going to be people who see this card and are pretty excited for it and are going to put it in their deck. And I felt like it was worth putting in this category and not the I will definitely die to this category for that reason. Okay, so next we have Spider Sense. This is 1 and a blue for an instant that says counter target instant spell, sorcery spell, or triggered ability. It also has web slinging for a blue. So they keep pushing these like how conditional can we make a 1 mana counterspell and still print it, right? So like this one, like you need to return a tapped creature, but it counters instant, sorcery, or triggered ability now, like just unconditionally. Like I think there was one in Final Fantasy that like was spell pierce for a single blue if you returned a legendary creature or sacked a legendary creature or played 2 extra. Like they keep dancing around this kind of text box, and I think this one's getting close because for 1 and a blue, counter target instant, sorcery, or triggered ability is close. You're not going to play it. It's not good enough, but it's close to good enough, right? Like this is starting to hit enough relevant things where it's going to counter the combo spells that you're scared of, or it is at least potentially going to counter the trigger from a problematic creature that hits the battlefield. Won't stop the body from being there, but it could at least, like stop well, you would counter the flash, but maybe you wouldn't. Maybe you let the flash resolve. They put the Hulk into play, and then you Spidey sense the trigger. Like that kind of thing comes up. And I think that the web slinging, like I would not be surprised if this is a card that like maybe like the mono blue flying man deck plays and it's kind of an all-star there. I could definitely see it being a case where there's going to be decks that get to play this and leverage it pretty effectively. And I'm fully expecting to like slide out of my chair the first time I get Spidey sensed for 1 blue. And I'm like playing around spell pierced and I get spider sensed. And I just want to concede the game on the spot. But I think it's still not quite there, but man, they are edging ever closer to just making a pretty close to unconditional 1-mana counterspell for certain things. Okay, so next we have with great power. This is a pet card for me. I say maybe in one deck for this one, but I think most people would not have this card rated very highly. But I know which deck I'm putting it in, so this is definitely going in one deck. So this is 3 and a white for an enchantment aura. It says enchanted creature you control. Enchanted creature gets +2/+2 for each aura and equipment attached to it, and all damage that would be dealt to you is dealt to enchanted creature instead. So there's a couple of things there that are relevant about this. Firstly, this is just like a massive beat stick potentially, because +2/+2 for each aura is often going to mean like +10 power. So you might just play this and you're going to like kill your opponent on the spot. The other part about this is that this has sneaky implications for some of the combo matchups, because many of those decks are actually secretly killing you with damage, not with you in the game effects. So this is going to stop some like natural storm lines from killing you out of Storm, for example. Like the Doomsday line from Paradox Academy or from Citadel Storm doesn't work anymore because that line is based on killing you with tendrils, and you get to just not take the damage from tendrils. I think is tendrils life loss. I think tendrils might be life loss. All right, maybe I'm wrong. It does tank a single Aetherflux Reservoir shot, which is maybe not nothing. But then the other implication here is that it makes racing very much more slanted in your favor. Like, you make like a 12/12, and sometimes what happens is that they just say, I'm going to chump block it and I'll attack you back. And now with something like this, you get to say, well, your crackback is not good, right? Like your crackback is not going to deal damage to me. This is another card in the long litany of cards that says, mono red, it's been nice knowing you, but you're dead, essentially. Like this is a disastrous card if it ever resolves against mono red. I'm going to play it in blue-white heroic. You're probably not going to play it in many other spots, but I'm excited about it. And I will hopefully have a video of me killing someone with it soon. Okay, I will definitely die to this card. Oh no, I'm slightly cutting off the card portion of I will definitely die to this card, but that's what this category is. I will definitely die to this card. These are cards that I think are maybe not quite there, maybe a little bit too conditional, but the power level is really high, so I'm definitely going to die to them. So first we have Anti-Venom, Horrifying Healer. This is a 5 white, white, legendary creature, Symbiote Hero. It is a 5/5 that says when Anti-Venom enters, if he was cast, return target creature from your graveyard to the battlefield. Great. Reanimate on 5/5. Very powerful. And if damage would be dealt to Anti-Venom, prevent that damage and put that many +1/+1 counters on him. So if this text box was on a remotely castable card, we would be talking about this one a lot more excitedly. 5 white mana is not exactly something that many, if any, decks are flush with. Now, maybe this is a reason to finally try and play like mono white Death and Taxes again, or something like that. Like maybe a card like this finally incentivizes you to be a single color. But problematically, those decks tend to want a bunch of colorless mana, like because mostly they're looking to cheat and get ahead on colorless pips with things like Mana Crypt and Soul Ring, which is not going to help you cast Anti-Venom. That being said, someone's going to resolve this card against me. I'm going to die immediately because it's a 2-for-1 as soon as you cast it, and it's really challenging to deal with in combat. So definitely a powerful card, just basically impossible to cast. Next we have Behold the Sinister Six. This is a 7-mana sorcery for 6 and a black. It says return up to 6 different creatures, up to 6 target creatures from with different names from your graveyard to the battlefield. This is too expensive to be especially good, I think. That being said, if you are playing maybe like a green-black mid-range deck or something that can eventually get you up to this casting cost, if you put this on the stack and it resolves, like you're gonna win the game virtually all the time. So I had to put it on the list. I think it is just powerful enough in that regard. I cannot in good faith advocate for putting this card in your deck. I think it is just too expensive. Maybe if it costs 6, and it's interesting that it is Behold the Sinister Six, but it costs 7. Like I think at 6 mana this card is actively a maybe, but at 7 it's just too much. My suspicion is that in Standard this card might run amok though. Unsure. Returning 6 creatures a lot. This is a very powerful text box, which is why I felt like I had to put it here. Okay, next we have Hobgoblin, Mantled Marauder. I think this card's probably in the wrong category. This one definitely should be in the maybe in one deck category. I think I was reshuffling some stuff around and this one got lost in the shuffle. So this one is a 1 and a red 1/2 with flying haste, and it says whenever you discard a card, Hobgoblin gets +2/+0 until end of turn. So yeah, like this is a powerful card. It's another one that it kind of pays you off for discarding. You don't get any value from discarding. It's just damage. Maybe that's why I had this one lower. So like you're just converting your discards into damage rather than converting them into like cards or a bigger bodied creature or something like that, which is obviously like less exciting. But the curves where you play this on turn 2 into doing something that, playing this on 2 into Faithful Suiting on 3 and then Mayhem in another creature, like that's going to feel very, very good when you get to crack for 5 on turn 3 with this card. But I think it's a little bit challenging to enable to be like especially powerful. The ones that we've played recently that have been more exciting have been the ones that get counters, like Marauding Mako, like I talked about, or there's the legendary Captain something, the 2 blue-red one that like gives +2/+0 and Ophidian's a creature when you discard a card. But I think probably in the kind of Grixis Mayhem deck or the Jund Mayhem deck, whatever it is, I think I'll at least start with this card in the deck, and maybe I'll discover that it's too bad of a top deck. But yeah, it's I'm definitely going to die to it at some point. Someone's going to cast this and then like Wheel of Fortune on turn 3 and I'm going to die. Okay, next we have Jackal, Genius Geneticist. This is a blue-red 1/1 trample, legendary creature, human scientist villain. It says whenever you cast a creature spell with mana equal to Jackal's power, copy that spell, except the copy isn't legendary, then put a +1/+1 on counter on Jackal. So like my brain isn't big enough to figure out how we can make this card like really broken. The text box sounds broken to me. Like if you cast this and then you get to play like a Mana Dork the next turn and a 2-drop, and you copy both of them, like yuck, you're going to win the game every time that happens. I think my guess is that that's not easy to do. And that in general, this card is probably just a little bit too like setup required, especially getting past that first casting cost, I feel like that's going to be the thing that's challenging. But at the same time, if you are able to set up a situation where this gets going, I mean, if you can turn it in, if you can even trigger it twice and make it into like a 2-mana 3/3 that basically like drew 2 extra cards by making copies of them, great card, very powerful. But I'm unconvinced it's enableable, I think is the issue. I think that it's unreliable to enable, but the text box was powerful enough that I wanted to put it in this set review. Okay, next we've got Scarlet Spider, Ben Riley. This is 1 red-green for a legendary creature, Spider Human Hero. It's a 4/3 trample, and then it has web slinging for green and a red. And then it says, if Scarlet Spider was cast using web slinging, he enters with X+1/+1 counters on him, where X is the mana value of the returned creature. So I have this one down here because I think a 3-mana 4/3 trample is just not quite good enough without other text on it, like without having a powerful ETB or something else going on. And the decks that are going to be playing this card, I don't think are going to be super happy to web sling it. The only exception is maybe you play like a Mana Dork on turn 1, and then on turn 2 you can go like play another 1-drop and then web sling my Mana Dork out of there. I don't know. It's making me yawn thinking about it. It just doesn't seem that high impact, I guess. But maybe it's good enough. I don't know. Like if you get to do that, where you go like Mana Dork into web sling this on turn 2, and then recast your Mana Dork. Like, is a 2-mana 5/4 trample, is that playable? Is it insane that I'm questioning whether it's not? I don't know. I just don't really see the home for this card. And maybe, green red monsters players in the comments, like, let me know I'm crazy if I am. If this card is great, I'm happy to hear it. But for me, it just doesn't seem quite high impact enough for a creature. It's kind of just a big stat stick, and I think we have gone beyond being able to just play stat sticks. We need our cards to do other things. Speaking of cards doing other things, next we have Silk Webweaver. This is 2 green white for a 3/5 Spider Human Hero. And then Silk has web slinging for 1 green white. And she says, whenever you cast a creature spell, create a 1/1 green white human citizen creature token. And then for 3 and a green and a white, you can give creature tokens or creatures you control +2/+2 and vigilance until end of turn. So this one, on the other hand, seems quite good to me. It's already, the stat line is fine. If you web sling it, like if you go turn 1 Mana Dork, turn 2 web sling this thing into play with your Mana Dork, which I think is one of the cool interactions. Then you've played like on 2 you've played a 3/5, so it's going to be hard to kill. And then on the next turn, if you recast the Mana Dork plus another creature, you've immediately just made like a 5 creature wide board, and you have the potential to anthem those creatures pretty quickly. So I think this one's more exciting. I think that I can't personally see the home for where this card goes. Like I can't visualize what deck this goes in. Maybe there's a tokens deck that wants this. The thing is, you would want to be playing a deck that's playing a lot of creatures and also Mana Dorks, but like green white little kid, I guess, like is the deck there, like the kind of like green white like life gainy deck is the one that is the most obvious for this home for this card. But those decks haven't felt especially powerful to me as of late, but this is definitely a really nice addition. So maybe it'll juice them up a bit. Next, we have another card that I think goes in these same decks. This is Spiderman India. So for 3 green and a white, you get a 4/4. And you can also web sling it into play for 1 a green and a white. And this has the ability, whenever you cast a creature spell, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control, it gains flying until end of turn. So where Silk kind of goes wide, Spider-Man India lets you go tall, which seems pretty reasonable, pretty powerful. You can target it can target itself with this effect, which is pretty good. Again, what is the shell that this goes in? I'm not 100% sure. But if you go like Mana Dork into this, into recast Mana Dork, make this a 5/5 flyer attack, pretty good turn 3. I've heard of worse. Next, we've got Interdimensional Web Watch. I only have this one on the list because of its interaction with Displacer Kitten. So this like really goes off with that card and other kind of flicker effects because you can use the mana to cast the exile cards and then flicker it and get more cards, get more mana. I don't really think that that's good enough in Canadian Highlander anymore. Like, I don't even think Displacer Kitten is a card that like the Paradox Academies have even thought, Paradox Academy pilots have really even thought about playing for a while. It's just so hard to enable, and it's so hard to reliably have it be useful. Like you really, it's like a 3-card combo. You need it plus a thing that is good to Displacer Kitten plus like cheap spells to actually flicker, and those things just aren't worth putting in the deck anymore. That being said, like, you know, there could come a time where playing a Displacer Kitten style deck becomes better, and if that happens, then the Web Watch is definitely one that will go in there immediately. Okay, so next we have the rocket-powered Goblin Glider. This is, I think, the last card from the set review. So this is a 3-mana equipment. It says when this equipment enters, if it was cast from a graveyard, attach it to target creature you control. And then it has equipped creature gets +2/+0 and flying and haste. It's equipped for 2 and it has Mayhem 2. So this is another one for the kind of Grixis Mayhem, Madness and Mayhem deck. This is just another reasonable thing to discard. Hopefully you have something in play so that you can equip it. Being able to give creatures haste on demand for 2 is probably not quite good enough, but like one thing that I think we've seen is that with oh god, I can't remember the name. The boots that you can get from Urza Saga. Man, it's been a long weekend and I'm very tired. Anyway, being able to give things haste kind of cheaply is definitely something that is exciting. 2 mana is maybe too expensive to do it. I could definitely see that being the case. But the fact that if you discard this, you get to equip it for free is a big plus. It's probably worth playing in that same discard deck just because you want a density of enablers, and this is another one. But yeah, not like gangbusters. This is like definitely the least powerful of the Madness and Mayhem enabled cards from this set, but it is one nonetheless. And yeah, that's it. That was my last card, and I didn't make a closing slide, so we'll do the closing here. So thanks so much for watching. Comment below. Let me know if I missed any. With this card, with this set, like I said at the beginning of the video, it's very parasitic. Like a lot of cards care about spiders, a lot of cards care about villains, and those are just not cards that are going to see play on our format. We can't enable them. We're not going to be able to play 30 villains in our deck to turn on those kinds of effects. But I might have missed some stuff, and I'm always happy to hear what everyone's thoughts are. If I missed anything, or if you had things evaluated differently than me, maybe you think that I'm crazy for having certain things in the format staples category. Maybe you think that I have some things too low, and I'd love to hear. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel if you are not subscribed. We post videos twice a week with gameplay or with more podcast style content about the Canadian Highlander format, and then the set reviews obviously are bonus content. They come out whenever the set comes out. You'll have me sitting at my desk at like 6:30 in the morning on a Sunday doing a set review for you, so you can always look forward to that as well. Without further ado, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.